Welcome to our week 2 go-to training. Today we're going to be talking for the first hour about brain development and going over some of the concepts that you might be familiar with already if you've done the readings on the platform. And then in the second hour, we're going to be talking about positive psychology and watching some videos along the way. So, my name is Stephanie Fetrin, and I'm one of the instructors for Psychology of Play. We do team teaching in this class, so you'll hear from a different instructor each week, which I think is pretty neat because then you get to hear from different perspectives and hear from things that we're interested in personally and things that we connect with in the material. So, how did you guys like your first week of Psychology of Play? I know it was a little bit crazy with the deadlines and Thanksgiving and the holidays, and I'm sure everyone was really busy with their families. But hopefully you got a chance to do some of the things on your weekly plan and get your assignments turned in. Okay, Denise is pretty fun. David said really enjoyed it. Ian said it was crazy busy. Yeah, I get it. I know that it's a difficult week to start on with Thanksgiving. So hopefully this week will be a little bit better. Your deadlines will be a little bit more consistent from here on out. Every Tuesday your plans are due, so make sure you're getting those done before tonight's deadline. Your initial posts are due on Thursday, and your reply posts are due on Sunday. So it's going to be the same for weeks 2, 3, and 4. So hopefully you guys will start getting the hang of it soon. Okay, so let's jump into the material of what we're going to be talking about today. So why is it important to understand how the brain works? How do you think that fits into this class? And feel free to type in the chat box, or you can raise your hand. Jasmine says the brain is powerful. What does it have to do with play? Ian says the brain's an integral part of the body. Cynthia says to understand how we can change our behavior. Yeah, awesome. Thinking. We use our brains at play, says Jeffrey. Okay. Well, first off, I don't want you guys to think that this is going to be just a boring biology lesson. Although I find the brain fascinating, I'm far from being a neuroscientist or an expert on it, and it's very complex. So we're just really scratching the basic surface of some brain functioning today. But basically, we're going to keep it pretty simple, okay, and see how it relates to play. So with that being said, we're going to review a little bit about brain biology, just the basics, stuff that will help you better understand yourself and others. So we're going to talk a little bit about the triune brain theory, which breaks down the evolutionary aspects of brain biology. Not too much detail, just the basics, okay? Then we're going to explore a little bit about how play interacts with the brain and how the brain changes over time, something that's called neuroplasticity. So hopefully you've read about that already, or you're going to soon. And throughout the session, I'm going to throw out some very practical brain rules that will help you with your own experience and maybe some things that you could add to your fit section of your weekly plan. So as your reading mentioned in week 1, there are 12 brain rules that are scattered all out the activities this month. You'll see them in little excerpts in your readings each week, and these brain rules are from the work of Dr. John Medina, and he is a molecular biologist, and he spent his entire career studying the brain. But he makes this book for the everyday folk, people that aren't experts in this field, and makes it really simple and easy to understand, and give these really cool tips and rules and tricks that you can help make your brain function at its best. So hopefully by the end of the session today, you'll have a newfound appreciation for the brain, or maybe want to learn some more about it. All right, so I think we already talked about that. Play in the brain, this is what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so our first brain rule is exercise boosts brain power. That is why we include in your plan, your weekly plan, a fit category, because we know how beneficial exercise is for our brain and for our functioning. So exercise in whatever form we can find it can boost brain power. And this is scientifically true. Exercise has tons of benefits. So let's take a brain break and do an exercise together. So I found something that we could do while just sitting at our chair, since we're all probably maybe on a couch or you're at a desk or not having a lot of room. So click on in your materials section the clip that says boost your brain. Boost your brain. Everyone see it? When you're finished watching that clip, please type done in the chat box so I know you're finished. All right, it looks like most of you guys are finished up with the video. So who really did it? Some of you are probably like, this lady's crazy. I'm not doing that. Something you could do at your own desk. You did? Okay, good. You know, it'd be funny if I put on the video and watched you guys do it. No, just Jasmine says, my cousin's looking at me funny. Yes. Okay, good. Just wanted to give you a quick way that you guys can just do a little quick exercise, boost your brain power at the comfort of your own desk. And so this guy, you might be wondering who this is. This is Jack LaLanne. So he's an American fitness, exercise, and nutritional expert and motivational speaker. And sometimes people have called him the godfather of fitness and the first fitness superhero. He kind of, made the foundation of American fitness and exercise. So he actually died in 2011 at the age of 96. And he was still performing his daily workout routine even the day before his death. So if you Google him, you can find out more about him. But, it's not just about his physical appearance, but he's like a mentally sharp guy. Like even late in his life, he was always really sharp. And, we have to be able to attribute some of that to his ability to take care of himself, right? Physically. Fun fact, Jumping Jack was named after him. So just a little fun brain break for you guys. Now, let's talk about another brain rule, survival. So what does this mean? Well, our brains have changed over time, right? And the triune brain theory was developed by Paul MacLean. And this theory is based on the premise that over time, our brain has evolved into 3 different brains. And this evolutionary development of the brain shows that it was developed from the bottom up. So how we evolved through time. So the triune brain theory, the 3 brains are the reptilian brain, the limbic system, and the neocortex. So first, let's talk about, can you guys see my mouse? Moving? Okay. All right. So this is basically the area of the reptilian brain. Then here we have limbic system, and this part around the outside is considered the neocortex. So I'm going to explain a little bit about each one and use a metaphor so that you can maybe think about your brain as an operating system or a gaming console. So they started out really simple, right? You know, the very first one, was it Atari? I don't know. I might be wrong about that. But they started out really simple, right? And they evolved into a fantastic, crazy graphics machines and gaming that we have now. So first off, the reptilian brain. This might be your first gaming console that you had growing up, maybe Nintendo or Commodore 64, Super Nintendo, whatever it might be. So the brain is this reptilian brain is responsible for involuntary things or automatic behaviors like breathing, our heart rate, our balance, digestion, all these things that we don't really think about that are just going on in our body. But the brain's responsible for those things happening. And it's the most primitive and controls functions that we need in order to survive. So it's basically just our basic survival functioning. And that part of the brain that is included in the reptilian brain is the cerebellum and the brainstem. So now let's talk about the next part, limbic system. So the next part to evolve was the limbic system, and that was known as the feeling brain. So it's responsible for generating emotions, especially fear and aggression, pleasure, pain. Okay. It's also responsible for memory storage and recall. So when you attach a memory with an emotion, you increase the likelihood for your future recall. That's a very common function of this part of the brain. You know, if you think about it, sometimes we have very specific triggers, like our senses can aid in memory formation and recall. Maybe, like, for example, you smell a certain perfume that you used to wear or that an ex um, relationship person used to wear, and you think of that person and immediately goes to that emotional place that you were in when you were with them. Or maybe you have a box of old photos, and when you look at them, you feel a rush of emotions that takes you back to that time. Or maybe when you hear a song that you haven't heard since you're a kid or a teenager, and you listen to it again and it brings you back there. So your sight, your sound, your smell can all trigger emotional memories, right? And music and songs have a way of doing that as well, like I said. And that's what the limbic system is all about. It contains our emotions, our memories, that type of thing. Morgan says, is that why trauma can mess with your memory? Yes, that's a good question. Trauma actually gets stored in certain parts of your brain, and they've been able to do brain scans and see that people who have had traumatic events actually have damage to certain parts of their memory. Sometimes people don't even remember traumatic things that happened to them until later in life when those things are accessed. It's really fascinating about how trauma affects that so much, but definitely a good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so let's finally talk about the next development, and that is the neocortex. That's the highest level. So we started out with the reptilian brain, the lower level functioning, just survival stuff. Then we go to limbic system, that houses our emotions, and then we move on to neocortex, and that's where we get more advanced, and that's what really makes us human, right? This is where we have that higher level functioning that takes place: consciousness, judgment, abstract thought, decision making, problem solving, all of those types of things. So if you were to look at a picture of a brain, you would see those two hemispheres, right? That pink part, and then the four lobes of the brain. So let me go back. Okay, so this would be the neocortex area. All right, so let's do a little review. Go to your material section and click on the brainstem link, and then type done in the chat box when you're finished, please. Please go to the material section and click on the link that says brainstem. All right, it looks like most of you are finishing up. Someone asked if these links would be available after. Yes. When you go back into the activity, you will be able to click on a Google Doc that will have all of the links for you to watch if you're on the app. Okay, so basically that was a video about brain. Who remembers this show? I'm probably dating myself, but I remember coming home and watching this after school. Pinky and the Brain. Um, Pinky and the Brain. Now the song's going to be stuck in your head all day, right? But just a fun little way to review all the different aspects of the brain. So, why do we still play? This was in our classroom. We did a little activity where we had to create some things out of cardboard, as you can see. Well, if our brains are so evolved, why do we think we still play? You know, we think of play as something that should have been weeded out, right? It's useless, doesn't really have a purpose. It might have, right? But even when it comes to the biological aspects, there are still many, many benefits of playing after many, many, many years. So, what do you do and learn in life can physically change your brain? That's wiring, right? So this newer kind of area when it comes to the world of neuroscience. We used to think that our brains were hardwired after a certain age. You know that old phrase, oh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, we're finding that more and more that the brain is a little more plastic than we think. So this is this idea of neuroplasticity. If you haven't heard about this before, it's basically saying that our brain is moldable, it's able to be shaped. And when we get to a certain point, you know, we're not unchangeable and, oh, this is just me and this is just my personality and this is just the way I behave. No, that's not necessarily true. Your brain has the ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural pathways to help it better adapt to its environment. So every time you learn a new task, your brain changes its neural circuitry based on that new knowledge. And then when you repeat those tasks, your brain can become more efficient and better performing that task. And it keeps going through that neural pathway and making it stronger and stronger. So this is why I know someone brought up earlier about trauma, that, you know, there are certain types of therapy that help you specifically work through that trauma and help you find new ways of coping. And then those new ways become new neural pathways that you might not really use so often, and that can help people recover from traumatic events. So, not just for trauma, but just for learning new skills. What comes to mind? Like, what is something you've been more efficient at or better at performing recently? So every time you do it, you get a little bit better. CrossFit, says Morgan. Photography, says DeAndre. Writing books, says Jasmine. Doing makeup, says Katera. Yeah, makeup. Yep. Okay. So each time you practice, you maybe do your makeup every morning and you keep getting better and better and better with that skill. So you literally reshaped your brain. Maybe you started not knowing how to do that at all or not being, you know, very efficient at it. And then you get down to science. Cooking, sewing, making music. Yes, exactly. So there is a video about neuroplasticity in your reading. Make sure to watch it if you haven't. It's actually in the material section, but we're not going to watch it right now. But it just explains this idea of neuroplasticity in a really simple way. So neuroplasticity is very interesting. They're still doing a lot of research on it, but the truth is that we can train our brain. So let's think about some ways to do that. So I'm going to give you an example. So there was something called the piano experiment. It was a study conducted in 2007. Anyway, so there was a study conducted at Harvard Medical School, and subjects were instructed to practice playing a piano. Just a simple 5-finger exercise every day for 2 hours. So if you've ever learned to play the piano, it's not very exciting when you first start. You're just doing scales over and over and over, right? You're just trying to learn those finger movements. So they had them do this every day for 2 hours. Okay. So after each practice session, they were hooked up to this machine that's able to measure brain function in different areas of the brain. So what they found was after just 1 week of practice, the area of the brain that was devoted to finger movements grew and took over a larger part of the brain. So just like if you know in the article it says they just took over like dandelions on a suburban lawn, so they just kind of like could see it like kind of spreading. So pretty cool, right? And actually, it was no real surprise to them at the time because they had a lot of discoveries and research that was showing that, greater use of certain muscles causes the area of the brain responsible for its movement to grow. Conceptually, it makes sense, because if we're using more and more of a muscle, it grows physically. So one would think that the area of the brain would physically grow as well, right? So the researchers said, okay, we kind of already knew that. Nothing new here. So they took it a step further. They took a second group of subjects, and instead of instructing them to physically practice the piano exercise, they only had them think about practicing it. So they played the piano in their head, holding their hands still, and just imagine how they would move their fingers every day for 2 hours. So then they also had their brain function measured. And what's amazing is they found the same amount of growth. So just simply thinking about something can change the physical structure and function of your brain. Morgan says, so if they quit doing it, does the brain shrink like muscles? Well, you might replace that with something else, or those neural pathways won't be as strong and other areas will be stronger if you are doing something else more frequently. But yeah, it's constantly changing. Like think of your brain as like a like this. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. I was going to say it's alive and it's glowing in all different areas and moving and changing constantly, but like can't think of a good visual for that. Okay, let's talk about another study. Oops. This one was a little bit more recent, and it was a trial that was funded by the National Institute of Health, and they found that the benefits of cognitive training for older adults could last as long as 10 years. So, older adults, they took 2,800 participants, ages 65 to 94, from all different educational, socioeconomic, racial, ethnic groups, like all different backgrounds. And they trained and they tried to boost these older adults' skill at memory, reasoning, and speed of processing. Okay, things that, tend to slow down with age, right? So they had 10 one-hour sessions of brain training where they did these different skills for 5 to 6 weeks. At a 10-year follow-up, they saw that they had significantly less difficulty performing daily living skills than did untrained participants. So even after 10 years, just those 10 one-hour sessions were enough to have long-lasting results. So those neural pathways remain strong, depending on how much. I know, for example, I played the flute growing up, and I, practiced every day for an hour for many years. And then I eventually, got into adulthood and late teenage years and I stopped playing. Well, I picked up my flute, I pick it up every so often when I go home to visit my family. And I actually brought it home with me and I started picking it up and playing it again. And the weird thing was I couldn't remember what the fingerings for the notes were, but I just somehow did it. It was just my fingers automatically did it. And then I don't remember how to read music. I don't know what the notes are, the letters, but somehow I can look at a page and just play it. And it's crazy how that is still so strong. Yeah, muscle memory, exactly. So think about your brain being able to do that too, right? Pretty cool. So even if I just sit and think about playing the flute and where my fingers go, that part of my brain is still very strengthened from all those years of practice. Cynthia said, could that reverse dementia? I mean, dementia can get pretty strong and deteriorate pretty quickly, so I think it depends. But I think a normal cognitive decline, if you're experiencing some of that, you could reverse it to some extent with some of these exercises. All right, they do that in the military, says Morgan. Yeah, exactly. So what is the myth? So We are who we are. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Whatever you've heard someone say that, now you can be like, no, actually, I learned that in my psychology of play class. That's not true. The truth is, we can teach an old dog new tricks. They can have, or we can have, I should say, real lasting psychological change down to the biology of our brain. So, have you guys ever successfully broken a bad habit or started a positive habit? Okay, tell us what you did. Let's see if anyone broke a bad habit. Stop smoking, says Cynthia. Jeffrey said it's alcoholic, 9 years sober. Biting my nails, said Kateria. Yes, biting nails. That's a hard one. Yes, that is proof, right? That you've broken a bad habit. You can learn new things. You can have really long-lasting change. Anger management. Yeah, so making more positive changes, being less aggressive or angry. Mm-hmm. Good habit, says Cynthia. Daily exercise routine. Yeah. Awesome. David says not paying attention in school. Okay. So you probably experienced this very thing in your life at some point. And we could definitely see these types of changes happen over time. So I really like this quote. It says, a single footstep will not make a path on the earth. So a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we walk again and again. To make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kind of thoughts we wish to dominate our lives. So it takes practice. Whenever we decide to make a change, we have to work really hard at it, right? Whether it's positive or we're trying to, change a bad habit. All right, so another brain rule, which I think falls in well here, is we don't pay attention to boring things. So let's take another brain break. What's a conjunction? Let's all find out together. Go to your material section and click on conjunction junction. What's your function? And type done in the chat box when you're finished. All right, so it looks like most of you guys are finishing up. So maybe that brought back some memories of when you were in school. This show was called Schoolhouse Rock. If you've never seen it before, it was a series that was on, and it was these short educational cartoons in between the Saturday morning cartoons that you really wanted to watch. So you get your, big bowl of cereal and sit down in front of the TV, and you'd watch your Schoolhouse Rock. And what was genius about this whole thing was that they tricked you into learning, right? These horrible, horrible people tricked you into learning on a Saturday morning when you didn't have to go to school, right? So what does this have to do with the brain? What does this have to do with memory and learning? Well, actually, Schoolhouse Rock, I'm just a Bill. Yes. See, you guys remember these. So they had a team of educational psychologists working for them, and a lot of PBS shows actually have, like Sesame Street, have these educational psychologists working on stuff since day one, because they want to know, okay, if we're going to show these kids some TV, we're going to talk about how the brain develops and what makes the learning stick. Because remember, we're not going to pay attention to boring things. So when we talk about play, one of the big things is that it's fun, right? So we're learning something, we're having fun, we get this catchy song stuck in our head, and it feels like fun because it's activating multiple parts of the brain. It's a multi-modality approach. Right? So it includes, you're singing, you're also using another part of your brain for learning, you're using your senses. So this brings us to another brain rule. So the more senses we can integrate into our learning, the better chance we have of holding on to that information. So in Schoolhouse Rock, we had visuals, with the chubby conductor, he's singing, it has a rhythm, it's got a melody, and then there's the information. And that actual learning is just kind of snuck in there, right? So that's an example of how we want to think about internalizing and holding on to this information. That's why even in this training, I show you videos. We do kind of stop, take little brain breaks, right? Because we know that you're not going to pay attention and remember any of this information if it's boring, right? So, speaking of boring, let's take another brain break. Oh, Morgan says, I'm a hands-on learner, then you're going to like this. Because you're going to have to, well, I guess it's not really hands-on technically, but you'll see what I mean in a second. Okay, so we're going to play a little game. I want you to look at this number. Don't write it down, just look at it for about 10 to 15 seconds. Okay, now write down what you remember. See if you can remember it. See if you can remember it. Oh wait, don't write it down or in the chat box. Write it down on a piece of paper so we can't see. But that's all right. We're not really looking. All right. Looks like a lot of you got. That's all right. It looks like a lot of you got it right. I should have said that in the first. Looks like a lot of you got it right. I could say, oh my gosh, you guys are such geniuses. But the truth is, what we did was we touched on something called cognitive load theory. It's not important that you remember that you can only hold about 7 pieces of information in our short-term memory. So, what does this look like to most of us when I put it like this? See, Jeffrey even saw it. I saw a phone number. Phone number, yep. So it looks like a phone number. So you might repeat it over and over until it was removed from the screen. So 591-7413, 591-7413. And then you keep doing that until you're able to kind of memorize it for a minute. So now let's try something a little bit more challenging. Are you ready? I'm going to let you look at it for 20 seconds. Don't write anything down yet. No cheating. Here you go. Okay, 20 seconds is over. Try to write down as much as you can remember. You can try in the chat box if you want. That's fine. Some people are like, no way, I'm not even going to try. A couple people are trying, at least getting a bunch. Ian has it. He has the idea down. Got the first 2. He had it and lost it. Okay. So let's show the number. Did you guys feel the difference from looking at the first number to looking at this number? Did you just get that little bit of like, ugh, some anxiety when this number popped up? And what does that mean? Well, that is a psychological response to what's called a cognitive overload. So you have this trigger reaction that it's going to be impossible for you to remember this number. Oh my gosh, that's too much information. My brain can't hold it all in that short amount of time. So I know Ian mentioned that he broke it up into threes, right? Maybe you break it up into different segments, 3 or 4 numbers at a time. Like if you think of credit cards, does anyone have their credit card number memorized? I know I have my husband's memorized. Okay. So, you break it up into 4s, right? And then eventually you're able to remember it. So this technique is called chunking. So by doing 3 or 4 numbers at a time, chunking, you're kind of cheating that cognitive overload and treating each chunk as one piece of information. So if you sang a song, if you made a rhythm out of it or put a beat to it, those are also some things that you could do as well. So did anyone do that? Did anyone like kind of sing the numbers to remember it? No. Not everybody does that. I don't. So I'm going to share with you a technique that hopefully you can carry forward. And since you're also creative, maybe you'll find this a little bit fun. We're going to have some story time. So let's look at another number. Oh no, cognitive overload. Oh no, there's no way for us to memorize this number. So let's create a story to help us. So let's look at this number as the story starts with once upon a time. Once upon a time, there were 7 18-year-olds. Those 7 18-year-olds were out for the day, heading to the court to play basketball. When they got there, there was a group of 35-year-olds taking up the court. Those 35-year-olds, so the 7 18-year-olds said to the 35-year-olds, let's be fair. We're going to play you guys for the court. The winner takes it. So the 7 18-year-olds play the 35-year-olds. It was an amazing game of basketball. The final score was 28-20. 28-20. Guess who won the game? Who won the game? The 35-year-olds won the game. Okay, try to write down the number if you can remember it. Okay, there's a few of you that got really close. I think, Yvonne, you were just missing the one before the 35. Yeah, see? So some of you were like, oh, okay, I couldn't focus on your voice or listening to the story. Maybe you're not, an auditory learner. Maybe you are a visual learner, and seeing it chunked up would have been helpful. But depending on what your learning style is, maybe this is something that would help for you. So, trying to remember something. But we all try different techniques to try to really help us internalize information, because it's all about reaching that long-term memory. Short-term is the easy part, but then remembering it long-term is what's helpful. So, think about, have ever had a cram session, you go to 7-Eleven, you get some Red Bull, and you sit there with your textbook, you start highlighting everything, and you just try to cram it all into your brain. Well, sometimes that works, you cram through the night, it's the morning, you go take your test, you do okay for the most part, but then you come home, you fall asleep. What happens the next day though, right? The information, how much of it do you remember? So sometimes, even though we expect our learning to be fun, interactive, we don't really make it fun for ourselves to learn. So if there's something in the future that you need to memorize or need to learn, consider making it playful. That can be a helpful tool. It's also important because the industries that you guys are going into, it's not really about your grade that you get on a test, right? It's about your skills. What can you produce? What can you create? What can you do when you actually get there? So if you're on a set or working in a studio, there's no time for what's the multiple choice answer? Can I see some options? You just need to know how stuff works. So it's important to have things and information in your long-term memory. So you go through all these classes at Full Sail and you don't want to cram for a month one subject and then forget it all when you leave here, right? Because you're going to need that information when you get out in the field. So it's going to help you with that understanding. And one of the best ways to really learn information is try to teach yourself, have study groups and teach each other the info. There's actually a fantastic physicist named Richard Feynman, and what he would do when he wanted to learn something, he needed to teach it. So he would try to take something very complex like physics and theoretical physics, and he would try to make the information fit on a page. And then he would see, okay, how can I teach this to just my every normal day, every day person? Like, how would I explain this to them? So that's one way to do it. Or use stories, or try to teach yourself, or involve your senses, or most importantly, make it fun. Myra says making a song out of it helps. Exactly. Okay. So that's all the brain rules that I have for you today. But there are some more scattered throughout, like I said, in your readings as we go through this class. So keep an eye on those. These are the rest of what is left. Okay, do we have any questions about the material that we just went over? Any questions about the material? We're halfway over. I'm curious about the gender one. Okay, that one is in week 4, so you're going to have to wait. I don't want to spoil it. But you'll find it in your week 4 reading. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to switch gears and go into the positive psychology lecture. But I'm going to take a quick bathroom break because I need to. And so let's come back here. It's 2:43, so I think I can be back in 2 minutes. Let's start at 2:45, okay? So go take a little quick break, get some water, do what you gotta do. All right, 1 minute behind schedule, but I made it back. Thank you guys for waiting for me. So, what we're going to be talking about now is positive psychology, and I wanted to switch it up. And we talked about the brain, some exciting, fun things. Now we're going to have nice pictures of relaxing beaches, even though I know some of you guys were talking about Christmas time, I saw. This is actually a beach in Thailand that I went to on my honeymoon. So, that's me right there walking across the beach. Beach is my favorite place. Definitely brings me some positive psychology vibes. So, what are we going to talk about in this half of the lecture? Well, basically, what is positive psychology? You're going to learn all about that. So, the goal of positive psychology is basically to change the focus of psychology from, oh, let's fix all the bad things and the worst things about people, into, hey, let's look at how people prosper in the face of adversity. Let's look at people's positive qualities. So, basically, how to stop focusing on what's wrong and really start looking at what's right. So we truly believe that incorporating these concepts will help with your productivity and your creativity and your playfulness and your mood in general. So we're going to talk about historical perspectives of positive psychology, examine gratitude and happiness, and define and examine flow. So let's first talk about the history of psychology to see how we got to this idea of positive psychology. Why does it all of a sudden have to be positive? So if we look at the U.S. after World War II time, the field of psychology grew because all of these soldiers were coming back, these veterans from the war, and men who before the war were confident, successful, they came back changed. Many people lost their jobs or status, or they suffered mentally and emotionally. So at that time, psychologists said, whoa, we need to start, figuring out this, how to help these people. We need to find science and fund all these different programs. And the focus of psychology was about pathology. Let's look at what's wrong. Let's look at the nature of diseases. Let's heal these people that come back damaged, right? So psychology became a science about healing, repairing damaged. So saying people are broken, and this is how we can learn how to fix them. So what happened? Well, in 1946, the VA was founded, and so these are the psychologists that were working on these treating mental illness. This is when we had a lot of those mental illnesses like PTSD and things like that developed or discovered. And they were getting a lot of money to do this research. So, okay, what are the positives of this? Well, we understand a lot more about mental illness because of all of these grants and this research that was being done, and a lot about mental illness and the diagnostic side of things, right? Well, what are the cons? Well, psychology's focus shifted on assessing and curing individual suffering, and practitioners went about treating mental illness within a disease framework. So people are broken, people are damaged childhoods, damaged brains, damaged habits. So we need to repair those. And that's what we're going to focus on. So what happened next? Well, the birth of positive psychology came around. Martin Seligman is credited to be the father of positive psychology, and he studied classical conditioning, learned helplessness, all of these traditional things that you would learn in psychology. And it wasn't until later in his career that he began to see a huge oversight in the field of psychology. So there was a moment in his life where he had a speech in 1998. And at the time of his inauguration as the president of the American Psychological Association, he declared that psychologists need to study what makes happy people happy. He said, the most important thing, the most general thing I've learned was that psychology was half-baked, literally half-baked, and I'm quoting him here. He had baked the part about we bake the part about mental illness. The other side's unbaked, the side of strength, the side of what we're good at. In many ways, he signaled the opening of a new perspective for the field of psychology. Morgan says a lot of people are still in that mindset of damage. Yes. So he says, hey, we've done a really great job of focusing on this part of things, the damage part. But what about the part that is the opposite? What about the people that are thriving? How are they thriving? What are they doing? We need to start looking at that and studying that. So most of you have an idea of what you believe the field of psychology is. You might have an idea of what that is in your mind. And the message that positive psychologists want to get across is this. They want to say, you know what, psychology is not just about pathology, weakness, and damage. We need to focus on that other side, the study of strength and virtue. Number 2, treatment is not just fixing what is broken, it is nurturing what is best. So also looking at, okay, these people are coming in with these issues, what are they doing that's working and how is that working? And number 3, psychology is not just a branch of medicine concerned with illness or health. It is much larger. It is about work, education, insight, love, growth, play. These are other things that we need to look at and study as well. And number 4, positive psychology is not based on wishful thinking or fads. It tries to adapt what is best in the scientific method to the unique problems that human behavior presents to those who want to understand it. So basically, some people think, oh, positive psychology, that's just a bunch of self-help mumbo jumbo. It's not based in real science. Well, no, that's not true. The scientific method, these are psychologists that have studied and done research and experiments and all of this to learn more about this new side of the field. Okay, so this is, 20 years ago. No, more than that. 1998. What is that, 30 years ago? Oh my God. Okay, 30 years ago. No. Okay, I can't. 20 years. Yes, I was right the first time. Clearly, math is not my specialty. Morgan, you're making me feel old. Morgan was born in 1998. All right, 20 years. Okay. So they've learned a lot since then. So what is some of the things that we've learned? Well, let me ask you a question first. I'm going to put out a poll here. Okay, so I put out a poll. It should pop up on your screen. You can vote right directly there. Do you have to be successful before you can be happy? I'll give you guys a little bit of time. 56% of you have voted. So if you haven't voted, go ahead and vote now. Do you have to be successful before you can be happy? Just your gut reaction. Try not to overthink it. What do you think? 68% of you had voted. If you haven't voted, I'm going to close it soon. All right, it looks like that's all we're getting. Okay. So 95% of you said, no, you don't have to be successful before you can be happy. And 5% of you say, I'm not sure. Jasmine says, why do we have to be successful to be happy? Look at you. See, you already understand this. Morgan says, I watched a researcher who talked about how if you set happiness as a goal, then you'll never achieve it. Interesting. So what I want to say about this is, let me hide the results. Conventionally, apparently you guys are smarter than average folk, but conventionally people think if I work hard, I will be more successful, and if I'm more successful, then I will be happy. However, to find out what positive psychology research is telling us about the answer to this question, we're going to take a little quick watch of a video from the materials this week. So go into your material section and click on the happiness advantage. When you're finished, type done in the chat box. Okay, looks like those of you who didn't watch it, it was in the readings that you are mostly finished. But I think he does a good job of explaining this idea of the happiness advantage. So the answer is from our poll earlier, right? We don't have to be successful before we can be happy. Happiness fuels success and not the other way around. And I like this quote here. It says, your brain at positive performs significantly better than at negative, neutral, or stressed. So when we learn to be optimistic in the present, our brains become more creative, more engaged, more motivated. Oh, it's 12 minutes? Okay, nope. That's messed up then. Stop watching. I don't want you guys to be gone for 12 minutes. I thought I had it as a tube chop where it was just a small part of it. Okay. You can watch the whole thing later. But basically, I'm just summarizing what he meant. So those of you who said done, you guys were like lying to me. Oh, DeAndre says that tube chop feature doesn't work. Oh, okay. So maybe it doesn't work on some browsers. I don't know. Sorry. Okay. All right. So everyone come back. So basically, if we're going to be in this optimistic mindset, we're going to be more creative. We're going to be more productive. We're going to find ourselves being more successful, right? When opportunities are presented to us. So if you're in a good mood, you're happy when you get to work, you're more productive. You might come up with a better idea in your meeting, your motivation's higher. Maybe it helps you get a promotion, right? So this is basically what's called the science of happiness. So when our brains are looking for and focusing on the positive, we profit from happiness, we profit from gratitude, optimism. So the more opportunities for positivity we see, the more grateful we become. So one of the ideas that positive psychology supports is the benefit of expressing gratitude and random acts of kindness. So that's what we're going to look at now. We're going to watch a video. Um, Let me make sure it works really quick. The science of happiness. Yeah, it should work. Okay, so it's 6 minutes and 29 seconds. So go ahead and watch that now and then tell me in the chat box when you're finished. How are we doing on the video? Okay, looks like you guys are just finishing up now. Okay, so, of course, but some of us got a little bit emotional during that, or maybe we were reflecting on our own lives and people that we have appreciated or do appreciate. So, of course, we're going to do a little activity now. So, I would like for you to please take out a piece of paper or your phone, open it up to write down for 2 minutes. I want you to think about a person who has most impacted you or influenced you in your life, just like they did in the video. And once you have that person in mind, I want you to write about how that person has impacted your life. You don't have to share this with us here, so no need to write your thoughts in the chat box. Just go ahead and write it down on paper, okay? Everybody ready? Everyone got something to write with? All right, okay, hold on. Trying to set a custom time. I don't know. Okay. It says 5 minutes, but we'll stop when it gets to 3. All right. So I gave you guys 2 minutes. So hopefully you have gotten some of your thoughts down. Remember, this is something you can always continue to do later. So this is called journaling, right? When you're writing down your thoughts, your innermost thoughts and feelings. And journaling can be very rewarding and very helpful. But now we're going to challenge you to take it one step further. So, actually expressing the things that you're grateful for or performing a conscious act of kindness is also beneficial for increasing positivity and happiness. So, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to contact the person that you wrote about. And if that person is no longer living, you can meditate and kind of send that message out there, or you can contact someone else who knew that person and talk to them about it, or you can just continue to journal about them. So if that person is still living, you can call, you can send a text, you can send a Facebook post or message, you can leave a voicemail if they don't answer, you can send an email, whatever you want to do. I'll give you 3 minutes to do this. Yeah, you're going to do it right now because we are not just going to talk about this, we're going to try it. So I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes, but I'm going to have you stop at 2 because my timer is not working. Denise, if that person has passed, then you can maybe call someone that knew that person and tell them what you wrote about them, or you can just meditate on it or journal. All right, I'm going to go ahead and set the timer. All right, so that was 3 minutes. Hopefully, you got a chance to at least send a message or talk to that person. Does anyone want to tell us, and you don't have to share if you don't want to, does anyone want to tell us what that was like for them? How you're feeling after contacting that person, if you were able to get a hold of them, or what was it like to just write down your thoughts about them? Um, if you want to share, you can either raise your hand and talk on the microphone, or you can tell us in the chat box. Morgan says, my mom cried. Okay, here, I'm going to unmute Matthew Rodriguez. All right, go ahead. Tell us who you contacted.
So I contacted my boss.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually one of the most influential people in my life right now, considering we were both prior military. He needed a guy to bartend at the time, and I was looking for a job. So uh, helped him out, and he kind of helped me out. And a couple of the projects we worked on, doing like a little commercial for the brewery, he kind of saw like my inspiration and what I was really good at, and just kind of pushed me towards it. Because at the time, I was actually applying for the Tacoma Police Department, and he didn't want to see that creativity go to waste.
Hmm.
And it's kind of awkward because we're both military, so we don't really share that kind of feeling in the military.
Right. So it's not. So what was his reaction when you told him, like you shaped the direction that my life was going in?
He's really happy about it. Kind of, I could tell it kind of brightened his day.
Mm-hmm.
Some days at the brewery it's kind of stressful, especially with his family, and it kind of just gave him a little laugh, something to laugh at. But he was really thankful at the same time, and I told him how thankful I was.
And how did you feel being able to express that gratitude? Like, how does your mood
Uh,
right now?
I'm pretty lively after doing that now. Like I said, we don't normally do stuff like that, but it definitely raised my spirits a lot more for the day.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing, Matthew, your story of gratitude. Let's hear one more. Let's hear from Morgan. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Morgan. You have to unmute yourself on your end too. There you go.
Did I do it?
Yes.
So I called my mom.
Mm-hmm.
When I was younger, I never gave her enough credit for how much she influenced me. I had a pretty rough childhood when my parents were really into alcohol, and then I went into the military for a couple years, and I didn't have a great time when I was in. Some really bad stuff happened, and so I had a really rough time for a couple years. And when I came home, it was completely different. My mom became my number one support, and I realized how much she influenced me and made me the person I am today. And so when I called her, she started crying when I started talking, and then I started crying, and then she told me to say thank you to you, because I don't talk about my feelings. So I guess it took someone assigning me to to talk
Forcing
about
you.
it.
Well, that
Yeah.
sounds really nice. Like it was a really nice moment between you and your mom. And, sometimes we don't say these things, we don't really open up or share these things, but it's something that really makes a big difference and just appreciating and showing that gratitude to someone who shaped us, and supported us.
Yeah,
So,
my mom, she never expected that gratitude either. She's never been one to expect anything back.
hmm
So I think she really appreciated it.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. Okay. All right. Thank you guys for sharing. Um, Something that we don't really think about doing, stopping what we're doing in the middle of our day and telling someone that we really care about how we appreciate them and we're grateful. Not only does it brighten their day, it also makes us feel good. And we're like, wait, why don't I do this more often? Because, sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk about feelings. And, you know, um, sometimes that can be a little bit challenging. But if you push yourself to do it, it can help. Um, let's read some from the chat box too. So yeah, thank you for pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I think someone just said that in The chat box. Okay. Kalia says, my biggest influence was my dad. He was a single dad. And despite that, he always took care of me and made sure I had everything that I needed, even if it was hard for him physically and financially. Awesome. Yeah. So I wonder how he would hear, um, how he would feel to hear that, to hear you say that. And a lot of times these are things that maybe happened in our past and we just kind of move on and we go through our daily grind of life. And we don't think to like remember those moments that shaped us and the people that helped us become who we are today, and thank them for that. So if you didn't get a hold of your person, please think about trying to do this later if you have time, or if there's more than one person. Jasmine said she has two people. Feel free to try this out. And even if it's a day that when you're just kind of feeling down, save this activity as something to do on a day like that when you just like need a little mood boost. Because when researchers actually did this with real people, but obviously real people, but when they picked people to practice gratefulness and gratitude over a period of a few weeks, they actually were showed, when they did pre and post testing on them, that they were happier, more optimistic, they felt more socially connected to people, they had better sleep, and they even had fewer headaches. So think about starting a gratitude journal. So this is where at the end of each day, you will write what you're grateful for that day. So it doesn't have to be, something from the past that was significant for you or a person, but just basically that day, something little. Oh, this person held the door open for me, or my husband offered to pick up the kids so I could go to the gym, or whatever it is. What is something that you appreciated? And you'll notice that if you do this for 30 days, that you'll notice your mood improving and feeling like that. So Cynthia's going to try to start it. Awesome. Even if it's something you write in your phone or something like that, or when you if you have a significant other, this is something that you could do with them to help your relationship. Share things that you're grateful for each other that day, focusing on those positive things instead of the negative, because we're easy to complain about all the things our spouse or partner or family member is doing that, piss us off or make us go crazy. It's easy to talk about those things, but, we don't always stop to say, hey, you know what? I really appreciated the fact that, like, you let me sleep in this morning. Like, so, and you watch the kids, like I didn't say it to my husband this morning and I probably should have, because I really did appreciate it. And that's the kind of stuff that, they teach you to focus on in these gratitude trainings. So something to think about. Maybe you want to add it to your plan for the week. It could be in the push category if it's something that is not something that you usually do. So let's now talk about switching gears and talk about how happiness is created. How do we get there to that place? I want everyone to think about a time that you were in the zone. Now think of one word that described what it was like to be in the zone. So really super hyper focused and just getting stuff done, creating things. Morgan says, when I was in JROTC in high school. Okay, you were in the zone. Or when I played basketball. Okay, DeAndre said photography at a music festival. Denise says when I play video games. Morgan says painting. Jasmine says my graduation day. Okay. So basically, what is this feeling of being in the zone? Well, it's actually a scientific theory now. It's called flow. So it's basically defined as a state in which people are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. The experience is so enjoyable that people continue to do it even at great cost for the sheer sake of doing it. So this is what Dr. Csikszentmihalyi, or however you say his name, I call him Dr. C. He came up with this term. And according to Dr. C, our nervous system can only process a certain amount of information at a time. So when you're in a state of flow, you're so engaged to the point where the brain doesn't have enough attention left to like monitor hunger, outside problems, tiredness. So maybe you sat down to play a video game and you didn't even realize how hungry you were until after you're finished, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot to eat, because you were so focused that your whole nervous system was in that automatic state. So the creativity that comes out during flow can feel automatic or effortless. And it's said to be far better than creativity that's evoked when people are not in flow. So this can be applied to almost any activity. I know some of you mentioned sports or playing games, but also, even CrossFit, someone mentioned, or Kalia says, I go into flow when I write. Yeah. So it could be applied to a lot of different things. So I have an example from a movie called The Legend of Bagger Vance with Matt Damon and Will Smith, and so it's a golf example. So if you go to the materials section, and it's just I think it's a couple minute clip. It's not the whole, obviously, of the whole movie. It's maybe the 5 minutes of this example. So it's called Flow Example. So please watch that and then type done in the chat box when you're finished, please. All right. It looks like some of you are finished. If you're not, sorry. This is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you'll have to watch it now. It's well, of course, Matt Damon and Will Smith. I mean, who doesn't like them? But um, I think this is a really great example of flow. You think about how he has to practice, he has to focus, and that sense of timelessness. And one of the reasons I like this example of flow is because at the beginning of the scene, Will Smith's character asked him to watch the other guys practice swing. And the idea of practice is a large part of achieving flow. So we sometimes think, oh, it can just happen automatically. No, we need to be able to be challenged, but also be practiced and also have a sense of skill. So let's talk more about the characteristics of flow. So basically, flow is when you're completely involved in what you're doing, you're focused, you're concentrated, you're immersed in this activity. You give all of your attention directly to the task at hand. Being in control of your own attention is not always an easy task, right? We get distracted, our phones ding, we're like, oh, what am I going to cook for dinner tonight? Our minds wander. So having all of our attentions focused is not, it's not something that happens very often. A sense of ecstasy. So you feel like you're outside of reality. You're so focused on what's happening in the moment. You have great inner clarity, knowing what needs to be done, how well we're doing it. You know that the activity is doable. So your skills are adequate to the task. It's not something that's too challenging, but it's challenging enough to show that you're not bored. You also have a sense of serenity. You're not worried about yourself, what you look like. You're just that part of you is like shut off. It's like that consciousness of self, like we learned about in qualities of play. Then timelessness. We're focused on the present, and hours seem to pass by in minutes, similar to freedom from time from the qualities of play. So you're seeing some overlap now. Intrinsic motivation. So whatever produces flow becomes its own reward. So I was just listening to NPR the other day, and I heard them say the word flow, and I'm like, "Woo, flow! What are they going to talk about?" Because that's what I teach about in my class. And they said that they did this study where they had people come in for the study, and they created a stressful experience. So the experience that they created was they said, "We're going to judge you on a scale from 1 to 10 of how attractive you are." Okay, so this is the stressful experience. Then they had split into two groups, and both groups were playing a different game. So one group was playing Tetris, and another group was playing a different game. And they found that the people that were playing Tetris and were able to get into a state of flow and just, lose themselves in the game and not really think about why they were there for this like horrible scaling of their attractiveness, actually were less stressed in the end. So we can see how flow can often help us in a state, and including games. So yes, I am saying that games can be helpful. For when you're feeling stressed, when you're feeling anxious, even playing a game that's not mindless, like I would think of like Candy Crush or something like that, or Tetris, or doing something like that for even just a little bit until you get into the state of flow can actually improve your or decrease your stress. So something to think about if you're if you have that. Yes, you can say your teacher said that you're allowed to play a game when you're stressed. I'll find you the study and post it with the links so you can read more about it. All right. So that's characteristics of flow. So like we see, to get into the state of flow right here through the middle, it has to be somewhat challenging, but not too anxiety producing and not too easy, and because then you'd be bored, right? So it has to be right in this sweet spot in the middle. So, finding an activity that we are able to get into that place is often the hardest part. So I like this quote from Dr. C. He says, "The best moments in our lives are not the passive, receptive, relaxing times. The best moments usually occur if a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile." So it makes me think of when I went on my first 3-hour hike, and when I think back to my vacations, that was a really pivotal moment for me because it was something that was challenged, but wanted to accomplish it, and I felt so good when I was done, and I just got into the state of flow where after a while I didn't feel my blisters on my toes from my new hiking shoes, and I just went with it. And those are those meaningful moments that we're going to remember in life, those moments when we experience that awesome thing called flow. So have any of you guys experienced that before? I know that we talked earlier about when you felt in the zone. You feel like, I'm going to just do it, says Morgan. Yep. Awesome. So think about ways that you can strive to have more flow in your life. And that's what we're going to talk about next is the PERMA model, because part of PERMA is flow, believe it or not. So the PERMA model. We've talked about happiness. We've talked about gratitude. We've talked about flow. Well, Martin Seligman says, okay, we know about all these things and how they can be helpful, but how do we experience long-lasting well-being? Because maybe flow only temporarily gives us that boost in our mood. Well, he came up with, in his book called Flourish, a model that has 5 essential elements that if we accomplish these 5 things in our life and work towards these things, we will experience lifelong well-being. So once you're aware of what makes it up, it's much easier to have a rich, meaningful life. Now, obviously, once you're aware of this, it doesn't matter unless you actually implement this into your life and do these things, okay? So here's what they are. Oops. Positive emotion is the first element. So any positive emotion, peace, love, gratitude, satisfaction, pleasure, inspiration, hope, motivation, any of these positive emotions, joy, they fall into this category. So can we feel those things all the time? No. That's probably going to be very difficult, but we want to make sure that we are often experiencing positive emotions. Because if we're not, how is that going to affect our mood, right? If we're constantly angry or feeling hate or disappointment or all of these different things. So we want to figure out how can we feel more positive emotions in our life, right? What brings you those feelings? Is it play? Is it being with family? Is it doing what your creative passion is? How can you bring more enjoyment into your daily routine? Maybe it's doing the gratitude journal. So you're feeling grateful, consciously feeling grateful on a daily basis for things in your life. That would be helpful for positive emotion, right? Okay. So let's move on to the next one, engagement. Well, basically, this is just very similar to flow. So being deeply engaged in an activity. It could be just spending time with friends or family or working on a project that you're fascinated with, or learning about something new, and this is a time when you're minimizing distractions and you're just saying, okay, for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to watch this tutorial on how to do XYZ, and I'm really excited about it. And you just focus on that activity. Makes you feel happy, you feel engaged, maybe you feel inspired to go work on whatever it is you were learning about. And that's going to help you get into a state of flow, which we know is very beneficial. All right, so let's move on to relationships. Well, they have to be positive relationships, right? Because we're social beings, and good relationships are core to that. We see people who have meaningful relationships, those people seem happy, right? Relationships really do matter, but they take hard work and they take commitment, and they're often only strengthened when we make an effort to connect with other people. So think about the relationships in your life. Are they positive? Are they negative? Are they toxic? Because think about it. Can we change other people? No, right? We can't change other people. We can only change ourselves. So if we're around someone negative and they refuse to change and they're toxic, being around them is not helpful for us, right? So we need to think about how far am I going to try to preserve this relationship, right? If it's not positive. So, and then how do you spend more time around the people that are positive in your life, right? The people, those relationships that you want to strengthen. Mark says, cut the haters out of your life. Yeah. Yeah, Cynthia, it's hard when it's family. Yes, it is hard when it's family, but I'm sure we can all think of a family member right now that we know is toxic and we do not like being around them and they are negative. You know what? So just think about how often do I really want to be around that person? Now, if you live with them, that's a different story. That makes it complicated. But, it's thinking about how to eliminate that as much as you possibly can. Sometimes it's not possible, but yes. Yeah, and sometimes you have to set boundaries and say, okay, this person makes me feel like, you know what, so I'm not gonna nurture this relationship any further. So, positive relationships, very important for lifelong well-being. Meaning, okay, what does this mean? Well, it means having a sense of purpose, right? Serving a cause bigger than ourselves. So maybe if you're religious or if you do something like volunteer work, something that helps humanity in some way, we all find meaning in our lives in some way. It's different for everybody. So it could be finding meaning in your career. So you do something, that helps other people, like, or in your personal life, finding meaning through your actions and how you treat others, or performing acts of kindness for others. That's all things that were going to help you find meaning. So if your life is lacking meaning, think about ways that you can increase that in your life. Volunteering, spending time with family, doing activities that make you or others feel better. All right, so that's meaning. Our last one is accomplishment or achievement. So, most of us are striving to better ourselves in some way, right? That's why you're here getting a college degree, whether you're seeking to master a skill or achieve a goal or win an event, those are things that are going to help you feel that sense of accomplishment or achievement. And that is important to have in your life for that well-being. So always having something like a goal, or I'm always striving for something, and that's going to feel great when you reach that goal, right? And then keep creating them and keep creating them and keep trying to achieve and accomplish the things that are important to you. So, any questions about the PERMA model? All right. So, that's all I actually have for you today. Basically, what we talked about is positive psychology and focusing on what's right with people, what's working in our lives. We talked about some concepts from major positive psychologists like flow and gratitude and PERMA. And hopefully some of these ideas that we talked about inspired you to add things to your plan for tonight that's due, to help increase that happiness and make you feel better. So, any questions? Okay, awesome. If you do have any questions, please reach out to your instructor. We love hearing from you guys. There is one more link in the material section we didn't get to. It's called Pep Talk. It's by Kid President. So I just left that in there as something fun you could click on right now if you want to save it to your bookmarks or on your phone to watch it later when you need a little pep talk. So check that out if you haven't already. Jeffrey has a question about our ad assignment due Thursday. Okay, so for your discussion board on Thursday, yes, you will be creating an ad. So you can upload that as an image in any way that you want. If you want to add words to a picture, if you want to do a keynote page or pages, whatever program you'd like to use, it's up to you. Do you have a specific question, Jeffrey, about that? Just wondering about what format. Okay, just use whatever you're comfortable with. We've had people, use like an Instagram post and screenshot it because they were able to write words on an image. Or we've had people make like a quick little website because they really liked making websites. Or we've had people that just use a Word document and put some images and words on there to make their ad. So it's basically whatever format you feel comfortable with. It doesn't have to be, a presentation. You don't have to be too complicated about it. One, ad size, I guess, paper size, I don't know, is okay. If you want any examples, reach out to your instructor, and your instructor can send you some examples from former students so that you have an idea. And I think that might help. Okay? All right, guys, have a great night. Oh, wait, sorry, Daniel. Does it have to be like a brand new idea, or could we use a little known one? I'd rather you kind of, obviously you can't recreate the wheel. So if you make an ad about the importance of drinking more water, obviously that's something that people have created an ad about before. But we just want you to create something original, not something that is, copied from somewhere else. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a brand new idea. Any other questions? And we're talking about the assignment that's due on Thursday. And just know that, this is only one of the many questions that is on your discussion board post. So don't spend like all this time working until 11:30 on your ad and then only doing 30 minutes on the rest of answering the questions, because it's a small percentage of your grade. So don't overthink it. Think about, evening up your time between answering all of the questions. So make sure if you talk about PERMA, when you're talking about concepts this week, you explain what each letter stands for, and you explain, how you're going to apply that to your life in detail, okay? Because that's one of the things we see people get points off a lot on our week 2 discussions, is that they focus so much on the ad that they don't realize that most of the assignment is a writing assignment, okay? Daniel says, I wanted to do the benefits of vaping over smoking. Sure. Maybe find some information on that to include in your ad. Okay. Anything else? All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day.